The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to a very special edition of the Phixated podcast. I am your host, Mike Azzolina, and I am joined by the equally as giddy Regs tonight. Regs, why are you so giddy, man? What are you so excited about?
No real reason. Just, Ruben Amaro Jr. talked to us for like a half hour about the Phillies. We do this.
No big deal.
We do this all the
No
time.
big deal.
We do this all the time. I'm going crazy, man. I don't know what to do with my hands.
We are fanboying out tonight, guys. We had the chance to talk to Ruben Amaro Jr. and in just a couple of moments, you're going to hear the interview with him that we got to spend about 30 minutes with him tonight, talking about the winter meetings and talking to him a little bit about, this Phillies team and what Dave has done so far this offseason and what's still to go. And Regs, I think, we both come from the same place of just so humbled to have him on the show. Right?
Yeah, there's nothing else to say. Just an unbelievable thank you to Ruben Amaro Jr. for A, taking the time to read a Twitter mention, B, replying with a "you had me at Rube," like a great Jerry Maguire reference, who, for anyone who knows us during college, hits us right in the sweet spot. Hits us right in the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Being unbelievably gracious with his time. Could not have been more kind, like a nicer guy. Not only talked about that, but, asked questions about us. We were able to just have some back and forth real quickly before we got everything started. Just, again, Ruben's now, he was here. He was very high, obviously, on the list of my favorite sports people. He's hit the rocket ship. Like,
he's my favorite. It was my favorite GM before. He's my favorite GM now. So it doesn't change.
Yeah.
One thing that made me laugh, and I want to apologize in advance before you listen to the interview. We did it on Zoom, and I don't know that my microphone was the actual recording device via Zoom. So at the beginning, I was muting my microphone while I was coughing, and Regs texts me, he's like, dude, your microphone's not muting while you cough. So you'll notice the first couple of minutes I cough a few times. I apologize in advance for that while you're listening to the interview. Hopefully you can still hear Rube as he's talking. But Regs texted me, I was like, dude, mute Zoom, don't mute your mic. And so I started doing that when I needed to cough later, but I certainly wanted to apologize to you guys before you start listening. Thanks, Regs, for that, by the way.
You're welcome. I'm always here for you. I was trying to do it to script, like I didn't want him to think I was looking at my phone while we were talking to him. So I tried to do it really fast while he was looking down. And other than that, the eyes were on Ruben.
And Rube, if you listen to this, I'm really sorry about that. My bad.
Yeah. Again, just enjoy this. We can't, we're still buzzing about it. It was an unbelievable conversation with some unbelievable insight that literally, again, I just keep thinking about, in my lifetime, would I have ever actually spoken to a general manager of a professional anything team? And we just got a half hour with one. And the insight that he provides and the information that he gives is just so unbelievable and comes from such a place of like knowledge and excitement. Like he's still excited to talk about it even now. It was just an unbelievable conversation that I think everyone is going to really, really enjoy.
Yeah, I don't think we need to do much else other than just say, guys, like, buckle up. I think you're probably going to have to listen to it a couple of times because there's just so much info. I told Regs, like, I'm going to need to listen to it 3 or 4 times, just to get through and really comprehend everything he said because there's so much to it. So without further ado, guys, here is our interview with, I can't believe I'm going to say it, former Phillies GM, Ruben Amaro Jr. All right, everybody, we are so excited and honored to have with us not just a former player of our favorite team, the former GM, my favorite GM from this team, and current analyst for the Philadelphia Phillies, Ruben Amaro Jr. Welcome to Phixated. Ruben, thanks for coming, man.
Hey, absolutely, man. I couldn't resist after all those after those tweets out there. You guys are playing the plead game, man. You got to my bleeding heart.
Oh, well,
Well, we have a knack for that.
We
have
do.
a knack for that.
we found a
So-
niche in that regard where it seems like we're going to keep trying it till it stops working.
Yeah.
So we figured, Ruben, like this is a great week to have you, right? This week is such an exciting week for baseball fans, and for us to have like the GM who brought us the golden years of Phillies baseball for us. And we talked before the show that, you were the GM during like our college years, which was so exciting to be part of from the fan perspective. But, we're going to jump into your experience as the GM and everything that kind of went around that process and the things that you experienced. And we're going to dive right into it right off the bat with you. And with the winter meetings being here, Ruben, we wanted to ask you the day in the life of a GM at the winter meetings. Like, what does that even look like? Is it, we see you in the hallway, let's talk? Is it come over and hang out at the hotel bar? What does that look like from the GM perspective?
Well, there's a series of things. I mean, I really love that time actually, because it's a time when you literally have almost your entire organization with you. It's not everybody, but people have to do certain business. There's best practices meetings. There's all types of different assistant GM meetings that I had been in as an assistant GM. There's all types of different things are going on the minor league side. There's a whole world out there. And there's some product reviews and all types of things that are happening in the industry. And if it's anything baseball, it's all happening there. And it's an exciting time for me because it allows me to at least bring many of my lieutenants and then their lieutenants to come and to talk baseball and kind of wrap things up and to set things up for the following year. And I think it's just a really great time. Obviously, there's a huge buzz in baseball because it's like the time when free agents are talking to agents and teams are talking to other clubs about possible trades. You're having meetings with other teams. There's a whole series of things that are going on. It's a little bit of a whirlwind at times, but I really enjoy that time because it's a time when you can really, sort of connect. You haven't seen a scout for a long time in your organization, or you haven't seen, a couple of different guys and women that are vital parts of your organization. You have cocktail hours and meals together and all types of things that at least you can share a little bit of time with the people that are help building your organization. So it's a fun time.
Like, what's the average amount of sleep you get, Rube? Like during that
not a lot. Not a lot. In fact, almost every single year, I don't get sick very often, but almost every single winter meetings, I used to get like a really bad cold, like right at that time every year. It's like, oh my God, not again. Like I used to load up on echinacea and all types of elderberry and all types of stuff so I didn't have to deal with it, but it was weird. And you're trying to stay in shape, so you get up really early and you try to work out and stay in your routine. That never happens, but it's again, the average sleep time, not a whole lot. But that's why you have other people that are working with you to try to help you through it. I like to take certain guys and certain number of our lieutenants and pro scouts and assign them to like different teams and say, hey, you've got, these three clubs, you've got a relationship with some of the scouts and some of the people there. You talk to them, see what they're trying to do. And you've already done some due diligence prior, but I mean, you're doing all types of stuff like that, just sending people out to try to get the real scoop. Cause rumors are rumors. And the reporters do a great job of finding, real truth in some of these rumors, but you really want to feel the real deal and see if there's a real fit for a discussion about, about a possible trade or whatever the case may be. And, and you set up certain meetings with a variety of different agents, especially the ones for the players that you're targeting. And you have a little chat, you have a little drink, sometimes you get a deal done on a cocktail napkin, and sometimes it takes a little longer than that. But it really is a good time, and it's great for the industry. It's a real gem for the industry.
So you talked a little bit about your lieutenants and scouts, and you're doing scouting throughout that process too. And during your tenure, a lot of those years, some of that offseason was a little bit shortened before winter meetings because you guys went deep into the playoffs. So, you know, you're doing your scouting, you have your scouts, you're having financial conversations with, you know, John Middleton and the ownership group, and you're having those assessment need conversations with your coaching staff and your manager. And so if you had a pie chart, Rube, what would be like the biggest piece of that pie as you're preparing for the winter meetings? Like, is there one that stands out more than the others, or do they all take that equal slice?
Yeah, excellent question. I mean, I think it's a little bit of everything, because you want to spend some time with the people that are in your system, the minor leagues, and David Montgomery did a heck of a job because we basically owned all of those clubs. So you also wanted to build a relationship with them. I tried to spend some time in the minor leagues, and I wanted to spend a little time with the GMs from each one of those teams. Talk to them, see how things are, you know, business going for them. We almost always had like a, you know, like a cocktail hour with our entire minor league system, and try to spend a little time with them. I think prior to going into those meetings, we had already sort of gotten a pretty good idea of where our budget was and what we needed to do. Actually, during right after these meetings, after having talked to a lot of agents and free agents and such, we had one of our quarterly meetings where we would talk to our ownership group, and I would sort of report back to them and give them some information about where things stand, as much information as I could, and then we would sort of talk about what the budget is and where we want to go, and what we feel our needs are, and David Montgomery was a heck of a liaison for me. He was just fantastic being able to manage through that. As far as a pie chart is concerned, I mean, we'd have a morning meeting every day, and we would, I'd find out what the schedule was for certain people, and then. Actually, a really big deal for us was the Rule 5 draft. That was a really important part. I think it started with Ed Wade, and it continued with Pat Gillick. And I always felt like that was a great way to be able to add to your system without really paying a lot for it, right? That you had a chance to maybe hit a gem or grab a guy that somebody didn't value as much as maybe you valued, and took a chance on. And I always felt like that was I always felt like the winter meetings was a big part of that. Mike Ondo was our scouting pro scouting director, and he kind of took charge of the Rule 5 process, talking with all the scouts, lining up which guys they wanted, the possibility of asking one of the teams to trade up and trade for a guy, and maybe spend a little money and pay him a little extra money to draft that guy so we could get him. So there were certain things that there are a lot of different things going on, but Rule 5 draft was kind of a big one for us, because we always felt like, hey, you can get an asset basically for nothing there.
That's the insight that obviously we were asking those questions, and what we were so happy to have you on about. Who else are we going to talk to that can give us that kind of perspective to not only our fans, but anybody that's going to listen to this? And that's like just such a nugget that you would never think of. Fans are always worried about the big signings. That's what all fans are checking their phones on, MLB trade rumors, all those things. That's all they're worried about. But to hear that the Rule 5 draft was such an important part of it is really fascinating, really, really fascinating. But getting to that player signing part, obviously it's what sort of keeps the MLB channel on for all day. It's what keeps a lot of these websites going during these winter meetings and during the off season. We know how much. I can't even imagine the amount of factors that go into sort of putting your board together of the players that you would want to sign or trade for in the offseason. There obviously is the opposite part of that, where what players maybe will have interest in our team, what players have maybe shown some interest in the past, or you've just heard rumors, maybe they have a connection with someone else on the team. So in your time as a GM, and we're seeing this maybe now with the Trey signing and the Bryce signing before, it seems like the Phillies have been able to convince players to take a couple more years, bring that AAV down. And as fans, we don't really think that players think that way, to be quite honest. We think all agents obviously are out there to make as much money for their player as possible. A player might think a different way. Can you think of a time during your tenure that a player didn't just have the number of zeros on the check in mind when you were maybe talking to them or when you were interested in somebody?
Well, I think probably the biggest and most obvious one was Cliff Lee. And I think that was one of my, I guess, slyest moves, I guess, most under the radar sort of moves. It was fairly clear after getting a lot of, doing a lot of background and getting a lot of understanding of where he stood as far as where he wanted to be. It was very clear to us that, he wanted to come back to Philadelphia, and that it wasn't going to necessarily be every dollar. Now, had the Yankees gone out and, found out that we were in on this thing, they probably would have blown us out of the water, and he would have been a New York Yankee likely. But our understanding was that you're hearing those stories about Trey Turner now turning down more money from the Padres, and same thing with Judge. But I think that I also think that there's some level of a player, and I know it almost always is length and AAV and total amount of money that drives it. There is a point in somebody's life where they say, well, enough is enough, regardless. I mean, what's the difference between 300 and 310? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I never played I never had those kind of dollars. So I wouldn't know. I think a lot of it is pride, and a lot of it is trying for the union to try to move the needle. Sure. And I get that. I understand that. But at some point, I think the player has to decide, hey, is this the place for me? And in the case of Cliff Lee, it was a really fun time to be a GM for the Phillies.
I bet. I can only imagine.
Ruben, I remember being in my apartment, and at that time, Twitter wasn't necessarily like the place to get all your information. So I was just clicking refresh on MLB trade rumors all night. And all of a sudden it came up that the Phillies were the mystery team and he was coming back. And I think Regs was my first call. Like, I think I ran through my kitchen for my phone. That was such a moment as a fan that like set the tone for what we were then. Like, that is who we were then. Like, we were that dynamo of a franchise, and you were at the helm, just, walking around the GM meetings like that's going to be my guy. Like, I'm getting Cliff Lee, but no one knew. And it was just such a special night as a fan. And that season that followed, I'll never forget.
Yeah, and I mean, it tells you a lot about the ownership group, because they literally gave us the leeway to be able to do those sort of things. And they didn't necessarily. I know we were selling people. We're selling out and doing, but they, and the value of the franchise was increasing, all that stuff. But they were really dishing out a lot of money, and they were allowing us to do that, just like they're doing right now. And I think the fan base should just be really appreciative. For years and years, and I was part of it, part of the front office. All we could hear was like, the Phillies are cheap, and the Phillies are cheap. But what we kept telling us, when we had the opportunity to gain the revenue that we needed to gain, which was when we got into our new ballpark, we were going to spend the money to try to get the best team, and we were going to act like a major market, and that's exactly what happened. And I think that the fans. I really do believe this in my heart of hearts. I think the fans should appreciate that part of it, because I know what the ownership group has gone through. I know the ups and downs and the difficulties of the process. And for them to be as aggressive as they have been over these past, couple of decades, ever since they got into the new ballpark, I think it's been really, and I know that went through that, 11 or 12 year span where we just couldn't get to the playoffs, and we're not a winning club. But it wasn't because the ownership group was not invested, and they really were.
Yeah, that's great context. And I think, Regs and I talk a lot about that, and are grateful, how grateful we are for John Middleton and his dedication and the rest of that ownership group to bringing a world title back to this city. And again, we talked on the last show about, first it was Harp, and then it was, bringing JT back, and it was Wheels, and now the last 2 years, Schwarber and Castellanos, and here we are with Trey Turner. So I want to turn to the current roster a little bit while we have you. And, certainly Trey was clearly the number one guy for the organization and the front office and the ownership group and Bryce Harper. We know that too. But I think for us as fans, as we look at that deal, you've seen some people, it's almost like divided from the sense of here's this 11-year deal. Now on this show, we're thrilled about it. We're not worried about 2030. We know our window. We see what it is. But, from the GM perspective, if you were in Dave Dombrowski's seat, at which point are you, the Padres might be on the outer circle of this and you got to swoop in. At what point do you have that conversation with Trey? This is how we're going to get it done. This is what we want. What's that conversation look like? And then if you could just speak to the player himself, you've seen him up close and personal many times being in the division. So just both of those areas, if you could just touch on.
Yeah, the difficulty of signing guys of this magnitude is he's just not really quite sure. And this is the nature of being a free agent. You're not sure who you're bidding against, whether you're bidding against yourself or you're bidding against, Xenon or, you honestly, you don't really know. I think when you talk about when you're targeting a certain player, you say, listen, this is where we can value. This is where we can stretch to, and this is where we can get to get it done. And so it's probably sort of like three tiers. You have an idea where it's going to go. It always goes north of that number, and it's a matter of making sure that your ownership group and the people you have to answer to understand this is what's going to take, and make sure that they're aware of that. And if they're not willing to do it, got it. If we are willing to do it, and they trust that we make the right decisions, they'll allow us to do it. And then we go and get it done. That's a difficult process. I remember having a lot of face-to-face conversations and a lot of, texting and a lot of calls and I like to hear voice. I like to listen to people. I like to look at their faces when we do negotiations, because I want to know how they really feel, particularly, and I like to build relationships and know the agents and know how they operate to understand, okay, when he says this, it really means this. And so I think that during the course of the process, you learn over the years, after years of negotiation, just where it's going to have to go to get it done. And, I was fortunate enough to be able to work for Ed Wade and Pat Gillick, who allowed me to go through those negotiation processes, right? The arbitration process, even like the 6-year free agent, and you're trying to sign, a kid to help your organization in AA or AAA. It's always a negotiation, and it allows you to build relationships with the agents, so that when you got to go get a guy like Trey Turner, you know exactly what you're going to get out of that guy and how he's going to operate and what's the real, okay? And what's it going to take to get it done. As far as a player, Trey's magnitude, I think he's the perfect player. I love the fact that Dave Dombrowski works the way he works, because I was sort of that aggressive. I was that kind of aggressive GM. He targeted his need. There were 4 great shortstops that all of them would have really helped the ball club, but he wanted to get the best guy. And I'm always about getting the best guy, and they got the best guy because he brings a dynamic to the team that none of the other players can bring. He has 5 or 6 different tools that are perfect for this club. This club's kind of lacking in speed. It's lacking in some athleticism. Yes, they have power. Yet I know JT's a great athlete, but there's not a ton of great athleticism throughout the lineup. He's a tremendous athlete. He steals bases. He's got bat to ball skills. He's got a lot of different skill sets that you're looking for. And Dave Dombrowski targeted them and got them. And, as far as, length of the contract is concerned, first of all, it's not my money or your money, and it's not the fans' money.
That's right.
It's John Middleton and the Bucks family's money. So kudos to them for like dishing it out. But really, I think as far as when you're trying to make sensible decisions, if you're in a big market, man, you got to pay to play. And part of paying to play, if you really want the player and what it's going to take to get the player, you got to overspend. And what is overspending? Well, overspending is the length of the contract for me, because you're hoping that in the 11 years of that contract, 6 or 7 of those years, that guy's going to be a really productive player, and he's going to buy the production that he may not have in the fourth, in the last 4 years of that contract. So you're trying to hit the window. You're trying to, and you're hoping that the guy is, at least athletic enough, and he's a super athlete. His body, his body may hold up much, much better, will hold up much, much better than others because of his athleticism and the liveliness of his body. But I just think, if you want to play big, you gotta pay big, and that's what they did with he and Taijuan Walker, and they did exactly what they wanted to do and get the right pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah.
So, Rube, we just have a couple more questions for you, and you just mentioned Taijuan Walker, and certainly they added to their pen with a guy that I think probably plays into that just other left-handed role, probably not the high leverage guy yet, Matt Strum. And, both exciting. I'm really excited about Taijuan Walker. I've loved watching him in a Mets uniform the last couple of years, and see what he's done that eats up a lot more innings that they needed to replace in their staff. But, after those two, I think, Dombrowski is definitely looking at least another move or two. So if you're sitting in Dave Dombrowski's chair, and you've even worked with Dave on the other side of the phone call a couple of times, but you've got about $15-16 million left to play with. What is it that you're targeting? Because we keep hearing more bullpen, and that's great. We definitely know that's a need. But is there another position that maybe Phillies fans aren't necessarily keyed in on? Is there a player you're looking at specifically? What are your thoughts on where he's going?
Well, I'm not sure. I think he's going to try to continue to build some versatility and some athleticism. The biggest thing that Dave has done, he's recognized, they got the team's not perfect. It's got some flaws, and the defense was one of them. And I think he's done a very good job of shoring up the middle of the diamond. You got to start with the middle of the diamond. So he's always got, they re-signed JT. They've gotten Trey Turner at short. Bryson Stott's going to be a cheap, inexpensive young player who's a solid defender and smart kid. And then you have Brandon Marsh, who's going to be a pretty good center fielder, I believe. I think he's going to continue to improve. So you got some quality in the middle of the field, and I think that was important. I do believe that there's still some improvement that they can have on the corners. I do know that they would love to be able to move the DH, spot around. Obviously, Bryce Harper, it's going to take some time for him to get back, but and that's why it's so important for him to be healthy so he can play right field, and Casty can play, can DH and flip into maybe left from time to time and let Schwarber DH. I think that they're trying to get a little bit more athletic in the outfield. I think that's important. I think that they're never going to stop, trying to get a little bit better. I think bullpen is really the heart of it. And I also think that he's going to try to get some more starting pitching. I know the Painter's coming. I know that there's, some young guys that are coming. And he's not afraid to move those guys to the big leagues when they're ready. But you can never have enough pitching, guys. You can never have enough depth. And so you might see, you might see maybe a swing guy, like a guy who can spot start, and a guy who can, pitch long relief. Maybe somebody who gives, Wheeler and Nola a blow in the rotation from time to time. I mean, that's something, they have to keep an eye on, because those guys are starting to log some innings and some mileage, especially after the run they made this year. So I think Dave's going to continue to try to add some pitching. I would think if I were him, that's what I'd be looking to do. Obviously, want to add some more to the bullpen. And for me, I got to believe that at some point he's going to be, targeting some depth pitching, long relief, that sort of thing to kind of help him.
Yeah, that's really great. So we want to get you out of here on this question. It's a two-part question, but number one, the first thing we thought of, and you might not be able to answer this, but we wanted to see if you could tell us what one of your favorite deals of your time as a GM was. And then the second part of that just goes into, you've achieved a great amount in baseball, not only as a player, but as a front office executive. any piece of advice that you remember from a mentor of yours from down the line when you were maybe just getting into it that you might want to share with not only us, but our fan base and anybody else that might listen?
Yeah, I'll answer the second question first, if
Yeah,
you don't
of
mind.
course.
So I'm doing some stuff for Rowan University and like an adjunct professor. And one of the things that I like to tell some of those guys, and some of it is like front office front office class, and I've done a couple of different things for people who are interested in the industry, in sports as an industry. Um, just get your foot in the door, man. In this day and age, I think you can. There's so many different paths to getting to the GM seat, or getting to like something that you would really like, whether it's a PR director or it's someone in marketing or whatever the case may be. There's so many different paths to get there, and I think it's just put yourself in a position to get in the door, and then from there you can learn. You can put your nose to the grindstone, man, and keep your. My dad used to tell me this all the time. He said, "You have one mouth and two ears for a reason." Okay, you're supposed to be listening a lot more than you're talking, which I should have listened to a little bit more. But
I'd like to tell my kids that, I think.
yeah, right. I think we all would. But I think that's actually a pretty important piece of advice, because I'll use myself as an example. I had a chance to observe, right? I had a chance to sit on a bench and observe. I had a chance to, because I sat on the bench a lot, but I got a chance to watch good managers and not so good managers. I got a chance to watch tremendous GMs and watch the way they operated. And I try to feel like I like to be able to take little pieces from each one of those guys, whether it's a manager or a coach or whatever the case may be, and try to utilize that for my own benefit. And I think that is something that I would advise. Be a good observer and don't think you know everything, man. In this day and age, I don't know, the Z generation or whatever the hell, everybody thinks they know everything. Dude, you don't know shit. Okay. The reality of it is, there's a lot more, there's a lot more intelligent people than you. There always will be. There's a lot smarter, sharper people than you. Try to learn from them and just make yourself a little bit better. As far as my favorite deal, I mean, I gotta believe that the Cliff Lee deal, when we were actually pursuing Halliday and that trade deadline, I just felt like we did a great job as an organization preparing for that. I was proud of that because it was my very first GM effort that year, and we deployed guys all over the map to find like the right starter for us. We knew we needed a high rotation type starter. I was already in love with Halliday. That wasn't an issue. And so everybody loved Halliday. It wasn't, no brainer. Okay. I'm not that smart. So just like anybody else. But our guys did a really, really good job with Cliff, man. They stayed on him. They watched him. He had some ups and downs for a while. He was a Cy Young winner. Then he went down to the minors. I mean, there were some, and we had to do some digging and some information, but there were some other pitchers out there that we were certainly that we were on. But for us to be able to not be able to get this done, but be able to turn to this to this deal and get that one done, I was very proud of not of me, but of the work that the guys did to set us up to put us in a position to get a guy like that. Just this great stuff. And we also had enough pieces close to the major leagues that someone would be interested in. Lou Marson was an interesting guy. He's a catcher in a premium position, was a pretty good catcher. And Jason Donald could have been, a sort of like Kevin Newman type player, at some point. None of those guys really got there. Now, Carlos Carrasco did, took a little time. But we had the right pieces, and I got to thank player development people and the scouting people to bring those people into the organization, because you can't make those moves unless you have the players to do it with. Yeah. So I was really proud of all of us in that deal, and always does really kind of take a village. Everybody says, well, this guy's really smart. He drafted this guy. Well, I didn't draft this guy. My scouting director drafted that guy. He's the smart guy. And so I don't, I think it's really important for people to understand that you got to hire good people to do these jobs because you can't take it all on yourself.
It's awesome. Rube, I got to tell you, like, this has been such a fun conversation for us. We are baseball nerds. We're junkies. Like, it is like our biggest passion. I mean, we bonded over it in college, and certainly you being a huge part of everything that happened during all of that. You can see just behind me what that group meant to me personally. I mean, my wife knows that roster in and out because of my obsession. So I wear my Doc jersey tonight because he is my favorite player that has ever donned a Phillies uniform because of everything that he stood for and that he did. And thank you for bringing him to Philly. Thank you for bringing all the guys you brought to Philly, everybody from him to Ben Francisco to, Hunter Pence, all across the board, because that generation of Phillies baseball was so special to us. So thank you. And
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I do. I will say this. I take a lot of pride in the fact that I was right in the middle of that. I was a part of it. I wasn't the reason, but I was being a part of that. Very proud of the fact that I was involved, that I got to be there at the base with Ed Wade when he was, getting this thing rolling. And I got to be there with Pat Gillick, who put the kind of icing on the cake, and to be able to try to carry that, the organization forward for them from those years. I mean, I take a lot of pride in the fact that I was part of one of our wonder years, or some of our wonder years. And it was a really fun time for me too.
Great. Well, Rube, thanks again so much for taking time with us. And I mean, as a thank you, I said this jokingly when we invited you, but I wholeheartedly mean it. You can see that Regs has got like the sweet pullover on, and I got the beanie on. I want to send you something to One Citizens Bank Way. So I'll send you the link. You pick something out. I'll make sure I send it that way, right. Or I'll find you on opening day and give it to you myself.
No problem. I appreciate that, man. I'll take it. Hey, it's free for me, man. I'll take it.
That's right. That's right.
Well, thanks so
the polo's nice. Play some good golf in it, I promise.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. And we'll friend of the show now, Rube, always and forever. Hopefully we can get you back closer to the season and get your thoughts on what this roster looks like and what they can do. We so appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely,
really
guys.
Appreciate your time.
And good luck with your podcast, man.
Really
Thanks
appreciate
so
that. Thanks again. Have a good one.
Take care, guys.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still coming down off of cloud 9, Regs.
I'm not down. I'm still up there, bud. We had to pause before we did like our intro and outro because we had to take a moment to like just breathe. He joked with us when he first got on, it's okay to be nervous, guys. Like he joked with us a little bit, and almost like self-deprecating way. Yeah, right.
But that's Ruben Amaro Jr., who was the GM of the golden age of our favorite baseball team. And we just talked to him for 40 minutes, and he was like the nicest dude.
Unbelievably nice. I mean, not that I can't say that I'm surprised. Of course, you don't go into that thinking that's if someone says yes, that they're going to be, a dick about it. But again, he's a professional, like, sports general manager coming to talk to two guys who just started their podcast like a year and a half ago. It's like, to take the time, like, he was unbelievably nice, even when you had to jump off, for a minute. Like, he was asking me questions, like, just unbelievably gracious and kind, and I'll never be able to say enough nice things about it.
For those of you wondering what Regs is talking about, before we started recording, so we recorded in Zoom, and before we started recording, my video wasn't working. So we had to, we learned that my Discord video was stolen, which was causing Zoom to not work correctly.
Right.
But before we did that, I had to sign out, come back in, didn't work. Then like Ruben was like, well, just send me a new link and we'll see if that works. So we did that. That was like 10 minutes had gone by that he had given us just because like my tech wasn't working, and was still really cool about it. Like was really into doing the interview, and just so grateful for his humility, his grace with that situation, his understanding and patience, and like just the interview itself and the depths at which he spoke to his job as a GM and, you know, this Phillies team and Dave Dombrowski. And I don't know, Regs, like I have so many thoughts going through my head right now. And I don't think I'll ever be able to like thank Rube enough for, you know, the time he gave us. But your initial reactions, I wrote down a bunch, you know, while we were sitting here kind of reflecting a little bit. But let's start with you, like some things that you take away from this interview and things that you'll take away, because now we have a little bit different of a perspective on what it looks like to be a general manager.
Yeah,
in Major League
it was
Baseball.
one of the things that I wanted to ask the most was like, what goes into this? What is involved in not only the winter meetings weeks, but like, again, I'm not going to be a general manager of a baseball team. Let's just put that out there, right? Probably not happening for me. But we were able to get into the mind of an actual general manager and get his perspective on things, get his insight into what goes on, not only at winter meetings, but in trying to sign a deal and talk to players and agents and how he liked to go about things. Just that insight is not accessible to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I keep going back to, is that conversation we just had doesn't have like, when did you ever in your life think that we would get an insight into baseball winter meetings from an actual general manager of a professional baseball team?
When we started this thing.
Not when I was born, like, not to forget the podcast, like just in life. For all those years we were like, you think about, what must it be like to be in those rooms or be at the winter meetings, or when you're trying to sign somebody. Like, he just gave us that insight. And I just can't, like, I'm not going to stop thinking about it. I'm not going to stop thinking about it.
I actually went upstairs and told Andrea, I'm going to have to listen to it 5 times just to really soak in everything he said, because, you know, just the Trey Turner question alone and everything that went into that conversation about, you know, when you know that this is the player, but the value that you see them at, and then the next level of that value, because you know the value you see them at, it's going to be higher, right? So like wherever you value this player, there's the value that the player in the agencies, and then there's what you're actually going to pay them. Like, it was that whole conversation is something that I just thought that the value was the value, right? And what he described to us is so different than what I've usually processed as what general managing looks like. And for me, Regs, the takeaways that I personally had throughout this conversation was when we asked him the initial question about the winter meetings and what a day looked like, and he talked about having his entire team together, right? And what that meant to him, because during the year you don't see a scout for months at a time,
Right.
And, you know, that meant a lot to him to have everybody together and to be able to deploy his different, as he called them, lieutenants to this club. And you're going to go talk to this club a little bit and get a vibe for what's going on over there.
Because you know them, right? You know them a little bit. And
yes. Yes. And just his appreciation for his team overall, as he talked toward the end about the people he learned from and the scouts that brought these guys and the head of player development that maybe drafted this guy. Like, all of these things that, you know, you listen to Rube as an analyst and you're like, this guy, he just the knowledge that he comes with is so far beyond what we could imagine. And then you're sitting with him and talking to him and you're almost in all of the answers that you're not really hearing the answers. I love that he talked about the relationship with the agents and what that means to you. And it's not just the major league ball players, but it's the minor league ball players, and you know, learning about all of those are negotiations. And again, we don't see that. Like, we don't see that, you know, that guy who gets the minor league contract is still a heavy negotiation because there are other teams after him. And him saying, you know, we don't know who's after these guys. Like, we have no idea who's after these guys. You know, sometimes you have an idea, but other times you're wondering if you're bidding against yourself. So for a guy who's been in that position and to say, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, and my team is really what made me, you know, successful at my job and being part of that layer of Phillies baseball. I don't know, man. I'm like thinking of things as I go. Like, his talking about the ownership group, right? Like that whole conversation about how fans need to be thankful for the ownership group that we have.
Right.
And I think you and I on this show are,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like I feel like we are. We talk about that all the time,
Yeah.
no?
Oh, it's unbelievable. Because again, we've been through, and again, not only that, but the perspective of, well, yeah, we're not going to spend a bunch of money now because our revenue source hasn't kicked in yet.
Right.
You can't spend money you don't have. Right. And talking about the new ballpark and how that sort of kicked everything into gear from a spending standpoint. And then, as he perfectly put it, we get to act like the big market that we were.
Yeah.
Like that stuff is, again, regular fans don't think about that. They just think that an ownership group has an endless pile of money. And yes, they are in most cases billionaires and have a lot of money, but also like the whole organization,
make some of that back,
right? The
right?
whole
Like
organization is a business.
Yeah.
They didn't become billionaires because they ran crappy businesses.
Right.
And like, that's what you have to remember with these ownerships, even if it's just one person or a group. This thing is a business. It's made to, they want to get a return on their investment. They're not just there to spend all the money and break even. So when he brought that up, I was like, what an like, of course, like that's such a good point.
What were your thoughts on his, you know, if he were in Dombrowski's seat right now, he really, again, like classic Rube, right? Because when he was the GM, his focus was pitching, right? So, you know, your thoughts on what he talked about. He did talk a little bit more about athleticism. That was interesting.
He brought that up a lot.
So, you know, he did talk a little bit about how he thinks they're going to get a little more athletic, but you know, anything that stood out to you there? Because I don't know if you saw me, but when he mentioned getting like another starter
that's
in
why
there, like I sat up a little straighter.
I'm flipping this question right back to you. I want to know what you thought about it. Forget me.
Well,
Who cares?
You know,
who cares what I say? I want to know. I mean, you're the one who's been calling for this 6-man rotation this whole time. Like,
yes. That's why I sat up straighter. I was like,
know.
Are we simpatico here?
That's
like we
right.
on the same page, Rube? Because as much as I understand the need for more relief pitching, I get it, and I think he'll add it. But when he said they need more pitching depth, and he gets the Andrew Painter side of things, and you know he sees all that, but you know, to give these guys a blow because they pitch so deep into the postseason, these are things we've talked about, and to hear him say that, you know, there was a little bit of validation, a little bit of pat on the back, because I've said I really hope he goes and gets 2 starters. Got Taijuan Walker. I'm still hoping for another one. You know, my guy went off Quintana went off today, but I think I nailed the money in years regs.
Yeah, unfortunately to the Mets, of course.
Yeah, but did I?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't look at it.
I got to look at my notes real quickly here but like him talking about 2 years, 26 million. I'm pretty sure he got 2 years, 26 million.
I'll look while you're talking.
So I think for me, it was about hearing him like validate that thought of we still need more pitching, because I was not on board for pitching at first. I really wanted the Trey Turner thing. We got it. And that was another part that like him talking about Trey Turner and everything he's going to bring to the table. Forget it. Right. Like that player evaluation that he gave us right now. So cool. Right. But yeah, that made me sit up a little straighter in my chair, because I'm thinking to myself, you know, everybody's talking about this and that. He talked about athleticism. He said, yeah, bullpen for sure, but starting pitching's still a thing that they need. They need more depth.
Right. Yeah. 2-year, $26 million deal for Jose Quintana.
I nailed it. Just the wrong team. Darn it. Go back and listen to that Dream Offseason pod just to make sure I'm not lying to you. But I'm pretty sure I said 2 years, 26 million. I have it written down in my journal, so I'm thinking I did.
I'm gonna believe you.
One last thing, Regs, that I want to react to, and if there's anything else, then you take the reins from there. But you know, when we initially sat down to like plan out what we wanted to ask him, we definitely wanted to check on like his favorite deal. And when he was talking through it, I was certain he was going to say Roy Halladay.
Yeah.
Certain. I'm wearing my Roy Halladay shirt for that. Like, this is my jersey because of that. Right. But it was interesting that he said, look, everybody wanted Roy. Like, Roy was the dream. And, you know, I didn't get Roy, but I think the deal I'm most proud of is how I pivoted to go get Cliff Lee. And, it wasn't just me, it was my team. And I'm most proud of being part of that because we didn't get the number one guy, but we got the next dude who wasn't too far behind.
Yeah.
Especially because he had a roller coaster of a career, right? Up to that point. And, we sent guys all over the country. We had these scouts over there and these scouts over there, and we landed on Cliff Lee, and we had the players to go get it. Guys who were close to the majors who could get it done, right? So he mentioned those guys specifically, and I wanted to quote that trade too because I still remember that trade verbatim. And really liking Lou Marson. Like, I remember being like, oh man, okay, all right, fine. But it ended up working out. Marson didn't have much of a career. Jason Donald did, but Carlos Carrasco is still going.
Yeah.
And has overcome a lot to be where he's at. So certainly that was interesting to me because he made so many deals. He got so many guys to Philadelphia, and that was the player that he chose in the deal that he chose because it was his first big one. Like, that was his first go get.
Yeah.
Like, that was 2009. That was the year he took over.
Right.
So that was his first big get, and that was cool that he sees it from a way that we didn't, because we all see it as, well, Rube was obsessed with Roy and couldn't get him.
Yeah.
So he went, but we didn't see that perspective. That's a cool perspective to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, man. You've already listened to it. If you're, listening this far in the podcast, we're still absolutely buzzing off of what just happened. I'm just focused on how unbelievably thankful I am for him taking the time to talk to us. The insight was like exactly what I was hoping to get. It was just, again, it was a once in a lifetime conversation.
Well, I hope not, because we did say to him at the end, come on back and
listen,
let's have a conversation.
Until that happens, again, we'll be hopeful that if he comes back on and he had a good time again.
End of the show, Ruben Amaro Jr., right, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I echo everything you just said, Regs. Like, so grateful for his time and willingness to be part of the podcast and interest in us, because it wasn't just, all right, I'm here, let's do this. It was, where are you guys from? How old are your kids, Regs? Like, how was baseball practice tonight? Like, and that's the other piece that I feel like needs to be mentioned. He said 7:30, then he asked about 7 o'clock. And when I told him that you had baseball practice with your kids, it was nope, see you at 7:30, kids first. And I think, like, to me, that speaks volumes of the type of guy he is. And so appreciative that, like, he was willing to work with us, because didn't have to do that. He just didn't. And it was really cool that he did. So, Ruben, if you decide to listen to this whole thing and us gush over you a little bit longer, like, thank you.
Yeah.
We so appreciate it and could not be more grateful for your time tonight and willingness to talk to us about the Phillies and just your experience as a GM. So, Regs, you want me to do the whole sign off tonight, or are we just going to say thanks for listening? Like, how are we doing?
No, give the people the info.
Give the people the info, because you might be listening for the first time. Like, and if you are, I do hope that you liked what you heard, and that you continue to listen to us. We do our best to just talk as fans on this show. Like, we don't consider ourselves experts. We just love to talk about Philadelphia sports. And so if you're listening for the first time, hopefully you'll click follow if you're watching on YouTube. We're really trying to get that subscription total up. So come on, help us out. Click subscribe. Get us on
Ruben Amaro Jr. people.
Ruben Amaro Jr. people, right? So click subscribe on the link below. You can follow us on Instagram. If you're looking to follow us just on social media, you can follow us pretty much anywhere you get your podcast. So we're not just on YouTube. We are on Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. Make sure you click subscribe, follow, whatever that is. Give us a rating. Certainly want to get this out there. Share it with people. Follow us on Twitter at B&B Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the Phixated Pod. You can follow me on Twitter at the Mic Drop 5 and Regs at Big Regs with a Z. And you can find us on Facebook at the Phixated fan page.
And follow Ruben Amaro Jr. at RAJR_20.
Yeah, we haven't plugged himself because he's freaking Ruben Amaro Jr. So
we'll plug him. I'll plug him.
We'll plug him. We'll plug you, Rube. And Rube, we're going to send you some merch. And if you're wondering what the heck are they talking about, click the link in the subscription for the pod below, because as you can see, Reg's got the pullover on. I got the hat on. The merch is super comfortable. It's relatively affordable. We don't get anything from it. We just love people wearing our brand out there and telling more people to listen to it, because this is like our dream. We love doing this. We love talking about Philadelphia sports, and we just want to talk to fans. So Thank you so much for listening. We love you guys. We are so grateful for this episode and the opportunity to talk to Ruben, and hopefully we can get him back on. Thanks again, Rube. Everybody take care. Be good. Be kind to someone. Be safe. We love you. We'll talk to you later. Go Phillies, baby.
Thank you, Ruben. Good night, everybody.
Oh my God! Deep to right field, way up there and way out of here.
The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you.
The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.